Hey GED students, it's GED question of the day time, and we've come today to arguably one of the most challenging types of problems on the GED. And those are ordering problems. So let's go ahead and take a look at the directions, and then I'll tell you why I think this is such a challenging problem. So directions here say, consider the slopes of the three functions below. Order the functions from smallest slope to greatest slope. So it sounds like a simple problem. You're just being asked to order things from smallest to largest. In this case, the thing we're ordering is the slope. So a lot of students would be like, well, okay, why do you think that this is a challenging problem? That doesn't look too challenging to me. I can put numbers in order from smallest to largest. Reason why I think these ordering problems are very challenging on the GED is because a lot of times what they'll do is they'll have you order things that are not the same kinds of things. And so they're really hard to compare. Like on the non-calculator section, they'll often have you order fractions and decimals and percents, or negative numbers and absolute values and positive numbers. And if you're looking at things that are not in the same form, ordering can be really tricky. So it's the same thing with this problem. If this problem was on the GED, it would be on the calculator section, most likely. They're asking us to order the slope, but the problem is they didn't just give us three slopes. They gave us these functions in different forms. If you look at part A here, we can see that this function is in graph form. We have a graph of a line. And if you look at part B over here, this function is written as an equation. We see two expressions separated by an equal sign. We've got an equation. And then in part C, this function is written as a table of points. This is an XY table, and each line of this table represents a point in a function. And so we've been asked to compare slopes, and yet we're looking at slope in three different ways here. Slope of a line on a graph, slope of an equation, or slope from points. And there's three different methods we use to look for slope based on what we've been given. Okay, so let's start with slope of a graph. If you remember, to find slope when given a graph, probably the simplest way, not the only way now, the simplest way, is to count rise over run. So I will count. My slope is a ratio of my rise, how fast my line is going up, to my run, how fast my line is going over. So in order to count rise over run, it's super duper important to start at a nice easy point to see. So like right here, I can see this point is right nicely on a corner, super easy. So I think I'll start there. And I think I'll go to here. And you might say, well, where should I start and where should I go to? It actually doesn't matter. As long as you do your math correctly, we will all get the same answer. I just picked a couple of points that looked easy that I could tell what numbers they were on. So if I count my rise over my run, my rise is my vertical movement, how quickly I'm going up or down. Starting at my leftmost point, you can actually see that on this graph I'm going down. How much did I go down by? Well, I started at -2. I went down to -4. I just went down by -2. -1, -2. So my rise is -2. Now I'm going to make a ratio of that. I'm going to make a ratio of my rise to my run. So let's count my run. Well, starting here at -2, I'm looking at this value in the X line. I go over, that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I went over 4. And another way to think of it, if I went from -2 to 2, that's a distance of 4. So I have a rise of -2 over 4. Don't forget to simplify this fraction, reduce it. Now, if you know how to reduce fractions by hand, great. If you don't, I'm actually going to have you just do it in your calculator, because we would have a calculator on this part of the GED, and it's important to know how to use your calculator. So to simplify a fraction or reduce a fraction, simplify and reduce don't mean exactly the same thing, by the way, but reducing is a part of simplifying. So to simplify a fraction in a TI 30XS calculator, you can just type the top of the fraction, -2. Be careful to type the negative button and not the minus button. And then type the fraction button, n over d. And now type the denominator, 4. Once you have that fraction in there, just go ahead and press enter. And it should reduce and tell you that's the same as -1/2. And so the slope of this line is -1/2. Good. I had to find slope because this problem is asking me to compare slopes. Okay, next one. Let's look at B. In B, I've been asked to find slope, but this time I've been given an equation. So remember that when y is alone, the equation of a line is in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. So you can tell what the slope is because it's whatever number is shoved up against x. Well, take a look at this equation. Is y alone? And you might say, Kate, there's no y at all. But remember, you should know, and we talked about this in the last question of the day, that f of x is just the formal function notation for y. So we do have y alone on one side of the equation, meaning that I can trust that whatever number is shoved up against x is the slope. So my slope here is -2. And I'm too lazy to write slope is -2, so I use the letter m for my slope. So I have a -2 slope on B. Now C is a little different. They've given me a table of points. If you want to find slope when given a table of points, the best way to go, or when given points at all, it doesn't matter if what form the points take, whether they're in a table or a set of points, or they just gave you 2 points. Anyway, if you want to find slope when given points, you probably want the slope formula. This is also on your GED formula sheet. The slope formula says m is equal to the second y minus the first y over the second x minus the first x. Now students ask me all the time, but Kate, which one is the first? Which one's the second? There's too many points here. And once again, the great news is it doesn't matter. The whole point of a line is that it has constant slope. A line is going up at the same rate. And so it does not matter what 2 points you call point 1 and point 2, you will get the same answer. So here, I will just call this first one point 1. And I'll call, let's call this one point 2. I'm telling you, it does not matter. Now we will plug our values in to our formula. So the formula says to find the slope, take the second y. So the y on point 2 is -3, and subtract the first y, and the first y is -7. Be careful. I have a negative subtract sign, plus I have a -7. Both of those appear here. And I'm going to put that over the second x. Well, here's the second x, 5, minus the first x, and the first x we had was 1. And now I'm going to do this math. Now I can do this math. So I hope that you know that subtracting a negative turns into a plus, but if you don't, your calculator could have totally handled that problem. And -3 plus 7, if I'm $3 in debt, but then I add $7 to my account, I'll go up to $4. And then 5 minus 1 on the bottom is also 4. And of course, 4 over 4, divided by 4, remember a fraction bar also means divided by. That simplifies perfectly because 4 divides perfectly by 4. And I would get, that's equal to 1. So my line's gotten pretty messy here, my work's gotten pretty messy, but I just figured out that my table has a slope of 1. So where can I write that? So this one has a slope of 1. My graph had a slope of -1/2, and my equation had a slope of -2. Now they ask me to order the functions from smallest slope to greatest slope. So which one of these has the smallest slope? Well, -2, being $2 in debt, you would have the least money if you were that far in the hole. -2 is the leftmost on the number line, and so it is the smallest. I'll show you what I mean. -2 is the leftmost of all these numbers on the number line. And so it's the smallest, so it'll come first. Next smallest would be -1/2. -1/2, I'm still in debt, but I'm not in debt by as much. And so the next function, if I went from smallest slope to largest slope, would be A. And then finally, that positive one. Positive numbers are always larger than negative numbers. So my third function, the table, C, has the greatest slope. So the correct answer to this very complex GED style problem is B, A, C. Great. If you have any questions about this, be sure to drop them in the comments and I'll be happy to answer them.